Hey guys, we are in Olstadt, Germany. It's actually in Bavaria. We're in the foothills of the Alps. Earlier today is the first day of Sukkot. No, yesterday was the first day. Yesterday was the first day of Sukkot.
Yes, sir.
So yesterday was the first day of Sukkot for us, and we are together here in Germany. Couldn't get into Israel this year for Sukkot, but we are having a great time. We're getting lots of pictures, some good stuff for Patreon, especially posting daily and sometimes hourly updates on Telegram. Right, all the beautiful pictures, some of the places and things that we've had an opportunity to do. But we want to take time right now and share a little bit more. Particularly, I think I want to get some of the ladies' perspectives. They have finished reading the book, Exposing the Spirit of Ashtoreth, by Jacob D Foulk, and fantastic book. You've heard me talking about it. So what we want to do is we want to just talk through some of the things that we're learning and seeing. I really would like the ladies to share some of the high points that they got out of it, and we're going to go for there. So buckle up. Here we go. Okay, guys, welcome back. We are gonna dive into exposing the spirit of Ashtoreth, particularly with the ladies sharing some of their thoughts from this. Certainly, we've been having more discussion on Patreon. Would love to have you come join us on the Patreon. We will be doing an updated, a compilation video of the things that we've been seeing and doing here while we're traveling in the Bavarian Alps. And you can catch that on Patreon. You can catch the updates. You can catch all the great discussion. So come join us over on Patreon. Would love to have you. But our purpose here is to talk about exposing the spirit of Ashtoreth and the book that we have enjoyed by Jacob Foulk. And I can tell you, we won't cover it all right now, will we?
No, sir. No, sir.
So
because Lily had said, well, we could just talk about each chapter, but I think we'd be here for a while, and y'all would get tired of listening to us.
Yes.
A lot of fantastic stuff, and I know I've gotten a ton out of it and look forward to talking about more, but I'd love to hear some of y'all's thoughts, some of the things that were highlights for you, and of course we've got the book here so we can take a look at the headings, and Kelly's copy is the one that's got all the highlights. So we have your highlights. My copy's at home. Your copy's on your Kindle or something else. All full of highlights. So start us off and tell us kind of what your overall thoughts were on the book, Kelly.
My overall thoughts were, this is a very eye-opening book. I sort of knew. I'd always heard the Jezebel spirit. That's where it always started with me, was the Jezebel spirit. And the women in the church with the Jezebel spirits, and how we are the ones that run the house and have the
man by the balls.
Yes, the man is in front, but the woman is the one behind pulling the strings.
So what's the saying that we have?
Happy wife, happy life.
That's one of them, but often you hear the woman say, "Well,
you're the neck and I'm the head." Or, you're the head and I'm the neck.
Right. So the man ends up being a figurehead, and ultimately the neck can change it wherever she wants it to go. Right. And that comes straight out of the Jezebel thought process.
Yes, sir.
But what's Jezebel got to do with Ashtoreth?
Well, Ashtoreth is where it actually all started.
Okay.
Ashtoreth is, and this is where I found it very interesting, is Ashtoreth is Satan, which is also Hasatan, which is also a woman.
So Jacob comes to the conclusion in his book, and it's an interesting conclusion that I'm still processing, but he comes to the conclusion ultimately that Lucifer or the adversary or Hasatan, all of these in Gan Eden, the one who came to Chava, Eve, is the same one that we would recognize as Ashtoreth, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, why is this significant? Why is it significant that she's like a feminine characteristic or character?
Why is this significant? Because it permeates our culture, and we don't realize sometimes that we are imitating some of these personality traits from Ashtoreth. And we were walking in Germany and looking all these cities, and all of them has these maypoles, and people innocently look at them and don't realize where can these things come from. And it all comes back to way back, and it all is related to this cults of this Ashtoreth poles and all these fertility things, where there is this cult of the feminine. And I think it's a very dangerous thing for women to let be led by this sentiment of superiority or behaving like this. So I think that's basically the problem, is to usurp power through, be it sex or be it emotional hijacking, all these things that end up being a form of control of the men. Because they want power. And I think the book also shows, it may not even be through marriage, but also through the son. If a mother tries to control the son to get power, or use a male family member to get power. So I think this is why we have to be constantly watching what we're doing.
So often in Christian culture, we tend to think of Lucifer as a male or in a male role, right?
Yes, sir.
However, the picture that Jacob puts together and draws from some solid things in Scripture, I think, is this idea that Lucifer, being one of the fallen angels, was functioning in the role as
not as a high priest,
as a woman, as a wife.
Yes,
the angels
as a
function
wife, as a wife to Yahweh.
Okay, and so why then would Lucifer rebel?
Because Yah created Adam, and she became jealous, and he threw her out of heaven because of the fact that she tried to usurp his authority, and because she wanted to be the only one.
Okay, so he does. He paints this a picture and draws pieces of Scripture together to demonstrate that from his understanding, the angels were a wife to the Most High. They function as if they were. It's a servant role, a helpmeet role.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you want to expound on that?
Yes, and then also building on what Kelly said. So if they were the original, so they were the first wife. So that role of the first ones the main ones in heaven, and then there comes Adam. And all of a sudden they have to share the attention of the Most High with this new created being, and they also get all this attention, and then they get also power over all the living beings on the earth. So they get very jealous, and a third of the angels follow Satan, or this angel who rebelled. So basically they divorced. They left the house because they wouldn't want to share the attention of the Most High. And so basically what Jacob also explains is that there's still many angels who are happy to have us, and they continue to do the role of a wife that is not jealous and wants us to be part of the kingdom. And this is also how wives should be to their husband, not expecting to lose something, but expecting to win something, and welcoming other wives to the house.
So it's certainly an interesting perspective, something that I had never looked at before as a possible explanation or understanding of the relationship between the angels and the Most High, and why some would be jealous of the creation of mankind. And so Jacob opens with kind of a shocking chapter for most of Christendom, right? It was shocking to us a few years ago when we figured it out, right? His opening chapter is God is a polygamist. And, of course, our viewers have seen before we've talked about it many times, but I specifically did a video titled 5 Times God Calls Himself a Polygynist, right? And that's just in reference to the house of Israel and the house of Judah, because we see that in Jeremiah chapter 3 and 31 and 33 and Ezekiel 23 and Isaiah 54, and maybe in Jeremiah chapter 2 as well. That may be a 6th place in Jeremiah chapter 2. But the point is, I'd only ever seen it from that perspective, and then Jacob draws this additional picture saying, wait a minute, it may be, the angels were in a helpmeet role, right? And the Father loved them and they loved the Father, and then some were jealous that he would come along and have a new love, creation, and mankind, with mankind to do similar, serve and take care of creation, etc. So tell me a little bit of what are some things that really kind of hit you?
Oh my goodness, I need to go to chapter 3.
I have to speak up, but yeah.
Chapter 3 is, I'll just go ahead, and chapter 3 is basically describing who is Ashtoreth. No, I'm sorry, that's chapter 5, but so Ashtoreth is right now a lot of the world is going through transgender confusion, and Ashtoreth is part of that.
Right.
Because of the fact that if you take the male out of the picture, you've taken the patriarch out. And so by doing that, you're reducing the male population and the masculinity, and that is part of Ashtoreth, Lucifer's plan, to do that by pulling all of the males, confusing, women to become men, men to become women. It's all part of the plan for him, or her, however you want to look at who Ashtoreth is. But Ashtoreth is a woman, according to Jacob.
So Ashtoreth was, and Ashtoreth has a consort, Baal, but always we see pictured here that Ashtoreth is the one that is in charge, that's controlling of Baal, and does the same thing within what we see in creation, with pushing feminism as an early aspect that eventually goes to transgenderism, that the goal, as Kelly was explaining, is ultimately to emasculate mankind and instead draw the whole thing in a feminist or feminized direction so that it inverts the authority structure, right?
Yeah, because Lucifer, or the enemy, hates mankind so much that the only way they can really destroy us is by weakening the head, which is the man. And this is what many women in the world, they don't understand, that they're shooting themselves in the foot when they emasculate their men, because they're basically killing our next generations. And we are not happy when our men are not strong enough, right? We may find appealing to have power, but behind the scenes we are frustrated because we are wired to wish for our men to take charge.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no woman that is fully happy to be in charge, even if they do all they can to be in charge, but in
Right.
the end they're not
miserable.
They're miserable. Yeah.
Interesting.
Not that I would know that.
So how might you know this?
Because I was there.
Okay.
I tried to control you. I tried to control the boys, and the more I tried, the more miserable I got because it wasn't working.
Right.
And it not only was I making y'all miserable, it was very aggravating and tiring for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to a point, and it wasn't scripture that brought this to me. It was by watching a crazy movie on control. You know, this is weird. Mom's Night Out. We watched that. I don't know how many times, but one day it was by Yah that he did this. That he said, "That's you've got to stop." That's
Kind of where you got the message.
Yes, sir.
Was through that, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so that's when I brought you and the boys in my house and said, I have an addiction. And the boys' eyes got huge. And it's like, oh my gosh, Mom's, and I said, my addiction is control. And I've got to break it. And I can't do it alone. So I'm going to need y'all's help. I'm going to need prayer. So that's where it started for me. And that's been, oh my goodness, 6 or 7 years ago.
That was part of a process of working towards the head being the head.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And you fulfilling the role that you're designed and created for, to be a helper.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. What else you got?
I'm just going to read basically when it talks about, when Jacob talks about the woman's angelic role on earth, it's basically a physical earthly image of an angel is the wife. And that's where he gets it from. She's not an angel, but she is the demonstrative earthly role of one in marriage, just as a man is an earthly demonstration of God.
So we understand God, Messiah, man, woman. We understand the Messiah and the ecclesia, or
Yes, sir.
the church, the assembly is the
Right.
proper, right, as the helpmeet, so on and so forth.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the angels themselves were performing that role with the Most High prior, or they continue to do that to a degree in one way.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then I've noticed this more so than anything, that the enemy is constantly going after the woman. Because this is just the way I think, because the woman tends to be the weaker vessel.
Okay.
And so, Hasatan wasn't able to fulfill his mission through Eve, so he's going to continue that through every woman that he can.
Well, go ahead. I was going to say,
Yes, but also Jacob brings a point that is interesting, that Satan or the serpent talked to Eve because they have the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew that he wouldn't be able to convince Adam. So, but he knew how Eve's mind worked because
Right.
it was something similar.
Right.
So maybe that's why maybe not that we are the weaker vessel at all times, but
No, not at all times.
but there is a thin symphony with angels and women, so maybe that's the point.
and yeah, that was something that I was looking at right there. But also the fact that the mind of the woman tends to operate more in emotion versus logic, and his understanding is that angels tend to operate in a similar fashion as the helpmeet to the Most High, which is very interesting. It was a very interesting chapter. What else would we want to cover here?
Well, I never really studied out witchcraft or anything like that. I'm only familiar with it just because Gunnar is very big, our eldest, is very big on studying out witchcraft and all the things that go along with it. But rebellion is basically witchcraft.
Is as the sin of witchcraft. That is
Yes,
scripture.
sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And if we as women try to take away the authority of the home, which is the man's position, basically what we're doing is we're not trying to live in or be part of Yah's kingdom. We're trying to be part of Satan's kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to rule the home and not the man.
Interesting. Okay. Flip on over. There's some more great chapters. That's really just taking some stuff out of chapter 3 or 5, something like that.
That was chapter
What is something you would want to talk about from the book?
I think there's also an interesting chapter. I think we were talking earlier today. It's chapter 6. So Jacob builds on Ashtoreth and how that became also a big part of the churchianity that we see. And for me, it was quite interesting because I did not have an upbringing in church.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting for me to read the perspective, because a lot of people, they see the church as their community and where they feel comfortable. And I would bet a lot of people just go to church because of the people and not necessarily because of God or the faith. And this would also be of some sort of idolatry of this communal feeling. And that has, and Jacob makes the point that this is sort of the mother. So it has this motherly role, which is also connected to the Queen of Heaven, and how dangerous it is to have that sort of cult.
So it's literally the worship or the draw is to the church or to the communal aspect of the church and not to the Most High.
Yes.
And the Queen of Heaven, which is also connected to Mary, is also connected to Scripture. Straight calls Asherah the Queen of Heaven,
Isis,
right? Because Isis, all of the ancient pagan religions, essentially to the same one. It's a female goddess worship, right?
Yes, and because of that, a lot of people refuse to admit that some things which are in Scripture, just so they don't lose that, be it income from some church or friends, and they choose. They are making a choice. I prefer this people around me than searching for truth.
Take the lie and keep the community, or keep my friends, than to recognize the truth and be willing to walk away from that community if necessary. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh, that was a good chapter right there.
Which one? Yes.
Today's man looks like Baal.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Today's man looks like Baal, chapter 11. I think all of mine was highlighted. Or a significant portion of this chapter was highlighted. What are some thoughts here?
Yeah, and how Baal, I would say Baal / Ahab, right?
Right. So again, we talked about Jezebel, and Jezebel came from Sidon, and the chief god and goddess of Sidon were Baal and Ashtoreth. And so when Jezebel came, her name, Isabel, means...
The wife of Baal?
Was it wife of Baal or...
Woman?
It's connected to Baal, but her very name has Baal in it, right? That's where it comes from. She's the one... Asherah was already present in the land, because we know that Gideon, for example, had cut down, the very first thing the father asked him to do was to cut down the Asherah poles and tear down the altar to Baal before he even got the command to go take care of the Midianites, right? But even in the Torah, early in the Torah, the Most High said, do not plant an Asherah tree next to, right? So we already knew that the command was there and that a little bit of this is going on in Israel. But when Jezebel came as the wife of Ahab, it came in force, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the dynamic with Jezebel and Ahab. Jezebel and Ahab ultimately functioned as a physical picture of Asherah and Baal. And she was the one who really brought it in full force into the northern kingdom, along with, we know that Elijah killed 400 prophets of Baal, right? There were 450 prophets of Asherah present. We'll talk about that in just a second. I want you to talk about that. But it's clear when you look at the dynamic between Jezebel and Ahab, that's where we get this idea of the Jezebel spirit, right? And people recognize that Ahab operated under her control, literally, and she was the one calling the shots from behind the scenes. She's perfectly happy for the man to look like the head. She's perfectly happy for the man to be the king, but ultimately she's the one that's pulling the strings and is the real seat of power.
You see that in churches.
So we see that a lot in churches. The actual title, Today's Man Looks a Lot Like Baal, looks to the beta aspect of so many men who are not truly in charge of their homes. As long as they look that way, the woman's happy if she's controlling things and doesn't care if the man looks that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I just had this thought that it's very interesting right now, and I am not getting into politics at all, but I have to say this, that this coming election, we have a female president, and you see so many women now saying, I'm going to vote for her, and then that's a problem, because she is a true feminist. She doesn't care about anything. And
well, we won't dive into the whole political side of it.
We won't,
yeah.
But because of that, she is, and how Ashtoreth works is just turning everything that Yah has ever created into...
Trying to flip it on its head.
Right. And take, because the Baal and Ashtoreth worship is opposite of Christ worship, and it takes out the submission.
Thoughts?
Go ahead.
I think it's the same we were discussing before, right? A lot of women, they seek power because they think this is what they want.
Right.
But it's not necessary for us to feel fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So this is and when we try to control the home or try to control the man, the only outcome is a man who is emasculated and a woman who is frustrated because she deep inside she's like, why is he letting me do it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's because he's afraid of her.
Okay. Talk about it.
I mean, the man will tiptoe around her. As long as she's happy, then, like you said earlier, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, or if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Yeah, that's another one.
And so, yeah.
So do we see that even in the Elijah story? We have this great image of Elijah and calling down fire from heaven and killing the prophets of Baal, and then what happened?
Then Jezebel tells him, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and then he gets all hysterical and flees and is all afraid of her, and yeah, for me it was always weird. Like, why is he afraid? He just killed 400 prophets of Baal. Why is he so distraught? Ran for his life.
He did.
And yeah, it's exactly that thing that women have that power, or they
think they have that power.
Well,
they end up having, right, if the man lets.
If the man allows it, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So it is a very common thing to understand that when a woman is angry on a rampage, the man's just going to slip out of the house or kowtow, just whatever it takes to bring the peace back.
Yeah.
And that's actually not what should happen. What should happen is him taking authority over the situation and controlling the situation, because a woman that is operating in this Jezebel spirit, or that is on a rampage, is seeking to usurp authority that doesn't belong to her. Right?
Exactly.
But yeah, we see that with Elijah, where she says, "If you're not dead by this time tomorrow," and he's like, he wasn't afraid of the prophets of Baal. He wasn't afraid of Ahab. But when she got angry, he was terrified and took off. Right. So yeah, that's an interesting picture there. And it's very true. I think any man who is honest, because I'll be honest, there were times before I took authority in my home that I was afraid of having things upset and everything going sideways and you being angry, and
I know.
Yeah. Doesn't work anymore though.
No, I mean, I knew. In my spirit, I knew it was wrong, but yet there was that stronghold of the Ashtoreth Jezebel spirit. Mm. And the only way that you're really going to get rid of it is, one, the man has to take over in the house, but two, well, I'm sure there's a whole list of things, but two, the man needs to pray over the woman to have that spirit released. Mm. And if you have to go through, somebody coming in and doing deliverance on you, however the case may be.
What that may look like, yeah.
But mainly, the man who is the head of the house needs to pray over their woman to release that spirit from them, because that spirit is a very, very strong hold.
And for men, I will tell you that you've got to get a spine. You can't be afraid of this thing. It is all, it's largely bluff and bluster, where woman's that way, and ultimately man has to say, not going to happen, not in my house, I'm not playing this game, I'm the authority. And that seems like in some respects it seems like a nice easy thing to do, but in other respects it's not. It's very challenging, and men have to step up and take authority over that, and be the head. You have to step into that headship role and lead.
Just one thing to add, also there is a spiritual element and there's also a behavior element. If you obey the woman when she's having an emotional hijacking thing, you're reinforcing.
You're empowering it, yeah.
You're reinforcing that behavior, and then I get what I want when I have a tantrum, so I'm going to keep doing it.
It's just like a child.
Mm-hmm. So there is also this reinforcement that is very dangerous, because we learn very fast.
Yeah, it works. You can throw the emotional flag on the field, and then you get what you want, right? So for men, what you have to do, and you have to do it every single time it comes up, is you have to call it out and say, that's not going to work. I'm not going there. And you have to have a spine. You have to be willing to stand up to it and say, I am not going to respond to this. Or respond exactly the opposite of what is being sought. The desired effect is being sought.
Right. And if the man needs to say, no, that's not scriptural, and if he needs to sit down with her and say, let's look at what Scripture says, and the man or Messiah man,
God Messiah
man woman. It is not God Messiah woman man.
Right.
And then go through the scriptures with her so that she understands that, because sometimes women, it's like, yeah, they hear it, but they need to actually see the scripture backing it up. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, though, the men, and this is, I think, where we're learning this, and this might be something more for you to discuss, more so than me. The man uses it over the woman to where it's almost the reverse effect.
Or lording it over, yeah.
Lording over
Yeah.
the woman. And so that would be, like I said, that's something for you that you would have to discuss. And then you'd have the woman afraid of the man.
Mm-hmm. And this is also why so many churches also try to usurp the authority in the families, because then they say, oh, what they mean is mankind, is not woman and man, but mankind, so everyone is equal. So the woman can say, oh, my authority is Christ, so you don't get to tell me what to do, or you and this also creates a lot of division in the home and emasculates the men, and women have this authority, which is the church. So there is a lot of problems also coming out of this.
Well, very often what we see pastors who operate as Baal in the spirit of Ashtoreth. By that I mean they're afraid of their own wives. They're afraid of congregational sentiment that's negative. They might lose their jobs. They might
the women in the congregation.
Yeah, I was fixing to say that they're not afraid of the men in the congregation. They're afraid of the women.
Right. And so then what happens is the pastor tries to take authority over the man because it keeps the women happy, right? If the woman's unhappy, she can go to her pastor, and then the pastor is, or the elders are going to come to the defense of the woman, and the man gets, again, emasculated.
Right.
When the truth is...
We're going to give you godly counsel.
Well, the truth is nowhere in the authority structure is pastor, priest, rabbi. There's nobody else. It's God, Messiah, man, woman. Not God, Messiah, insert some authority, man, woman, or even reversed there. So that's another place that you see this Asherah spirit show up. Often is in the leadership of religious circles, because it's the women pulling the strings behind the scenes, right? Very common. So anything else that you want to say here before we wrap this one up?
The spirit of Asherah is wicked.
I think there's another point that is very interesting in the book, is how polygyny helps men bring the right authority to the home. And I think there's a good job that Jacob does. Like, he realizes that every time a warrior of God came to power, the first thing he got 2 wives, and then he would tear down the Asherah poles, and so there was an order there, and there might not be a coincidence.
Well, there's a direct connection between them, because by virtue of the fact that I'm unique in this relationship, it immediately upsets the balance of power.
Oh, absolutely.
It's no longer an equal balance or a woman trying to lord it over the man, right? Instead, now I'm the unique. Saint Augustine, one of the church fathers, said something with regards to that. And I forget the exact quote, but essentially he says that polygyny, like what we see elsewhere in nature, is it sets the man apart, or the male apart, as being unique. In a lion's pride, you have one lion and multiple female lions. For anybody that raises cattle, you don't need one bull per cow, or chickens. If you have a whole bunch of hens with no rooster present, there's always this crazy going on.
They kill each other.
All you need is 1 or 2 roosters present, and peace comes to the whole flock, right? So, yeah. Well, part of it's the protection, and part of it is that the man brings order and brings authority to the circumstance, right? Instead of just the bickering that goes on. We see that with chickens and the hens tearing each other apart. So yes, Jacob makes the very clear point. You look at Gideon, he had 70 sons. How many, and he probably had a few daughters too. How many women does that take, right? He was polygynous. You look at Joash, who was the grandson of Athaliah, who was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. So Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, became queen in Judah, the southern kingdom. And then when her husband died, her son was on the throne for a little while, and then, if I remember the story correctly, she killed him, but he'd already had some offspring. She killed all of the other heirs to the throne except for Joash, who was hidden away. And when he was 7 years old, 2 Chronicles chapter 24, verses 2 and 3, if you look at the end of the previous chapter, you get the background on Athaliah. But the first thing that Jehoiada the priest does is, it says, and Jehoiada the priest gave him 2 wives, and they bore him sons. Or Joash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest. And Jehoiada gave him 2 wives, and they bore him sons and daughters. And then that's immediately followed by a statement about him tearing down the Asherim, tearing down the altars to Baal, restoring worship in the temple, so on and so forth. We see it again with Josiah. Josiah was 8 years old when he came to the throne. And he had 2 wives, and based on the ages that we find out later on, that he was having children by the time he was 16 years of age, right? Because his son, the one that came to the throne, you check the ages, he was born when Josiah was 16, right? And yet here's Josiah, who is tearing down the Asherim. He's destroying the high places. He's doing this. So one of the points that Jacob notes, or one of a major piece of the book, is that polygyny, by definition, restores order and is an immediate affront to, and it may be part of the reason why polygyny is so hated, so attacked by the adversary. And particularly why it's so unsettling to women, because it immediately upsets the balance of power if it's just 2, right? If it's just him and her, the balance of power, she can now manipulate it and seek to control that. When it's this way, that's much harder to do, because all of a sudden there's uniqueness here. And we see that is the way the Father operates. We see that Yeshua speaks of himself in multiple parables as being polygynous, having multiple weddings. And
being unique to his wives, right?
Yeah.
And also this element of how we learn about the spiritual world through marriage.
And
Absolutely.
Jacob also talks about polygyny as a calling.
True.
It's not, because most men is just like, hey, multiple women, yeah. If you go about it the wrong reason, then it's not righteous.
Well,
and so it is. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let me speak to that for just a second, because you're right in that I think for most men, you'll figure out who wears the pants in your family or in your house just by mentioning the word. You don't even have to say, I'm thinking about this as a possibility for our future. Just simply saying, Scripture's really got some interesting stuff about men having more than one wife. It's polygyny, right? And it seems to be righteous. And I'm telling you, you'll know within about 15 seconds who wears the pants in your family, all right? Or in your house. But polygyny itself, it can be walked out by anyone if it's walked out patriarchally, because it's the created order. However, in order to, I can assure you this, the adversary will attack much harder if you're doing this for the right reasons, which can lead to, as you're talking about, can lead to a lot of problems.
Yes, sir.
Right? My strong recommendation is get your house in order before you take on a second, right? Get this structure together right before taking on a second, because as soon as you do, every weakness over here will be exposed, right? And can potentially be taken advantage of otherwise. And so it's very important to absolutely get those things in order, which is why, again, going back to Gideon and Joash and Josiah, and we don't see David involved in, we don't see Abraham and Jacob and Moses and Caleb and any of these others involved in Ashtoreth stuff, right? So it certainly is one of the marks. It's not the only mark, and it can be abused because we do see some polygynists in Scripture who obviously were participating in false pagan worship and were themselves polygynists, right? But obviously, as an individual in the home, he wouldn't have been the authority in the house. Something else is going on. The spiritual dynamic is completely wrong. So, yeah, good point. Very good. Anything else? Well, good stuff, guys. There's more. There's so much more, and I know I'm looking forward to getting back into the book myself to go through some of the things that I got from highlights or that I have highlighted in my book. Strongly recommend that you get a copy, get multiple copies. In my house, there are at least 5 copies of this. I'm telling you. 2 of my sons now reading it. All 3 of us have our own copies that we're reading and have read. I've been back through parts of it. It is Exposing the Spirit of Ashtoreth or Ashtoreth by Jacob D Foulk. You'll find that on Amazon. Excellent book. And if you've read it, put in a review. Write your comments. Well, I'd love to have you put your comments down below. We'd love to hear your comments too on if you've read the book, your comments on some of our thoughts here as we share them. And again, this is something that's been heavily discussed on our Patreon. Would love to have you come join us in Patreon so that you can be part of the Telegram groups. We've got some private Telegram groups. There's a women's only group, men's only group, and then there's Together group, as well as some other groups that we do for coordinating and working on some projects together and stuff like that. So, fantastic. All right? All right?
Okay.
You good? All right, guys. For King and Kingdom, we bid you shalom.